With this here, this ain't about being flashy. This is game day, son. It's only about one thing. Getting that W. That's the only thing that matters right now. Boy, are you ready? The past is the past, you know? It's a new day, bro. My day. You gotta do it now.
Blindside Fantasy Football Podcast back. Matt, we got a lot of stuff to go over after all those Thursday night games, after the Turkey Day games yesterday, and then obviously preview the rest of the Week 13 games and play our favorite. Let's talk about flex and go over some bold predictions. But how was your Turkey Day?
It was good. Surprised that we're here tonight delivering such great analysis after such a turkey hangover, because I definitely ate too much. I'd rather be just sitting on the couch right now, I think.
Something tells me it wasn't the turkey that gave you the hangover. But yeah, let's jump into these three games from yesterday. Packers at Lions. I feel so much better now about my my Matthew Stafford rating compared to my ranking compared to you and Rob. You guys had him number one. I mean, he put up a pretty good day, but I got to feel like you guys have to be a little disappointed by all those turnovers, huh?
Yeah, I figured he'd have 25 or so, but I mean, I'm not going to be upset about 20 points in the ESPN standard scoring. Yeah, he played fine. Couple too many interceptions. That's now 6 in the last 2 weeks, so that's kind of concerning. But Stafford's been awesome all year. Number 3 quarterback overall. He'll continue to win you games.
I got to ask you, 2 wide receivers in this game that severely underperformed. Nate Burleson and Jarrett Boykin. I mean, both of them terrible. I mean, which one do you think was the bigger underachiever yesterday?
Well, Boykin, just based on what he's been doing, but switching up the quarterbacks there, you got a half with Flynn last week, and he actually looked pretty good. This week, can't say the same, actually, against Lions defense that he should have been able to carve up through the air, so Burleson was surprising. Boykin was a little less surprising. Is he a flash in the pan? He's been around for how long now? So I wasn't expecting a huge game from him. I think we talked about the rankings. Who did we have first? I like Jordy Nelson over him. I know you were kind of the other way on him, so I guess that's something more for you to talk about. You were expecting a good day from him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what you get for expecting a good day from your quarterback when your quarterback's Matt Flynn. I mean,
yeah.
they should have probably thought about that one a little bit more, but Boykin seemed to have some sort of connection there with them. Just obviously couldn't get it together in this game. Really disappointed because in one league where I'm basically win or go home, I started Boykin over Riley Cooper, another guy that I've really liked this year, and I really hope that doesn't come back to bite me now because hanging up that 0 really, really hurts. Burleson as well, though, I mean, he was probably one of the biggest pickups last week, probably killed a lot of teams because he probably got picked up and put right in the starting lineups. No catches as well, just one target in this game. I'm not really sure what happened there, but hopefully he gets it back together next week. Bush and Bell, Reggie Bush and Joyke Bell, 20 touches each in this game. Not looking into Bell's workload at all. I mean, this was a blowout early, so he got a lot of that work late. Detroit defense, though, Matt, that front four is looking legit. I mean, held Eddie Lacy to just 16 rushing yards, and they haven't allowed a running back to go over 35 rushing yards since week 5. That's 35 yards. I mean, that is a stout front four. Remaining schedule, they got LaShawn McCoy, Ray Rice, Andre Brown, Adrian Peterson. Are you worried about the matchup against the Lions front four?
Yeah, absolutely. I rated Lacy lower than I have in a while. He was still, I think, top 10 for me, if I remember correctly, just because of, obviously, the workload you figured he'd get and what he's been doing. But this is similar to what we saw, Bobby Rainey 2 weeks ago go off, play these Detroit Lions. I think he was 18 for 35. Eddie Lacy with a similar type day. It's a stud defensive line. It's funny to say it, but Lions can play some run defense. It's a team that hasn't really traditionally played much defense in recent years since Stafford's been around the league. So it's surprising to see. But yeah, if your running back is playing Detroit, that's something to be worried about.
I was going to say, LaShawn McCoy next week will probably be bumped out of my top 10 just because of this matchup. And then in 2 weeks, Ray Rice. Ray Rice is going to be way, way down for me against this defense. Raiders and Cowboys, we all knew that they were going to ease Darren McFadden kind of back into this game, but just 5 touches for 13 yards. I found that to be really surprising. Rashad Jennings here, 17 carries, 1 reception, so he got obviously the majority of the workload, but did suffer concussion late in this game. He's got 10 days to recover from that concussion, so it's quite possible he could be back next week, but which one are you going to rank higher next week, Matt?
I'm going to say McFadden. We do our rankings earlier on in the week, so my initial, I'll definitely have McFadden higher just based on the uncertainty of Jennings. McFadden was eased back into it, and it's not like I thought he would, after this week become the guy again. I think there's going to be a real running back by committee situation going on as we go forward. And if anything, I think leaning towards Jennings more. So this week, I'll have McFadden higher strictly because of the concussion. But as the weekend gets closer and we see how he's doing, that would change. If Jennings is playing and he's going to start, obviously I've got him higher.
Oh, see, I was going to say I'm still going to probably go Jennings higher until I hear news that he's definitely out. 10 days, I think. I think he'll be back.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I didn't think of that. You're right. Thanksgiving game, he's got almost a bye week in there.
Yeah,
that's a good point. So. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I will. I think you're right. I think I'll rank him as going forward. He'd be playing. Yeah. So you're right. Yeah, Jennings ahead for me.
But speaking of injuries in this game, Lance Dunbar hyperextends his knee. Did look amazing though. Before that, 12 carries for 82 yards. DeMarco Murray obviously kind of saving his fantasy owners. Over 100 total yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. Really surprised that they went to DeMarco so much in that red zone. Romo typically has a great day on Thanksgiving. Still had an okay day here, but not quite what I was expecting. And then finally, Andre Jones for the Raiders here. 7 catches, 136 yards, and 11 targets. Are you you think this was fluky, Matt, or are you a fan of this?
I'm always a fan of the big wide receivers. This guy's 6'4", 215. He's a 4'5", 40 type guy, so he's not exactly slow. You love the 6'4". I don't know. It's interesting to me. I think he's a second-year player, a guy who was originally drafted by the Cowboys, actually. So interesting to see him kind of come out against his old team here. I don't know. I got to see more. I liked what I saw, though, definitely. Just one game, I can't really. I'll certainly say he'll be in a waiver wire guy to take a look at.
Ron Streeter here, who was the guy I kind of had that connection with McGloin. 3 catches for 57 yards on 4 targets. Which of the 2 will you rank higher next week?
I think I'll still stay Streeter because of previous weeks with McGloin, but they'll be close, absolutely. And like I said, I just love the 6'4". A guy like that, he can be utilized in the red zone pretty easily. So you could expect to see a little bit more from him going forward. For now, still Streeter.
Yeah, I love Streeter. I'm still not knocking him down a little bit. If anything, this maybe bumps Holmes into my rankings, that 50s range, the low to mid 50s.
You got to think about it. Denarius Moore was out, so that will be another thing. If he's back next week, what does that make Holmes? Who knows? Right back to the bench, not playing much probably.
Yeah. Steelers and Ravens, Matt. Did you see the hit Le'Veon Bell took? Did you see this?
I haven't seen it. No, I had to go down to the wife's family for Thanksgiving, so I missed way too much football. I was pissed.
It is disappointing on many levels. If you didn't see it, obviously you didn't. He should have had a second touchdown of the day, but gets hit. His helmet.
Oh yeah, right on the centimeter line, right?
Yeah, well, his helmet pops off. So because of the no helmet rule, even though he got into the end zone, the play is called dead as soon as his helmet pops off. But he was unconscious before even landing in the end zone. He was just out. Unbelievable. It just at one point Heath Miller actually comes up and blocks the camera, some of the camera showing it, because Heath Miller knew it was bad and didn't really want it out for the public yet. But just like Jennings, he's going to have 10 days to come back from this one. I personally think he misses a game here because that was a hell of a hit to get knocked unconscious like that the way he did. Granted, a concussion's a concussion, but this seemed like a major hit that's going to cause him to probably miss a week for me. if he does miss a game, Matt, which running back do you think steps in for him? Do you think it's Jonathan Dwyer or Felix Jones?
I think it'll be Dwyer. He's gotten more of the sporadic work here and there, I think, than Jones has, and he's more of a similar player to what Bell can give you. Although out of the backfield, he certainly isn't. So I think it will be a little bit of both. I'm not going to be looking to pick up either one to fill in for my roster. Certainly not.
I was going to say, I feel like it's going to be a running back by committee where
Yeah.
One of them probably gets 12 to 15 touches, and the other gets around 10, but both will probably be outside my top 25 next week. And then, Matt, just a week after you put in Torrey Smith as your number one wide receiver, you have him at 19 this week. And I got to say, despite the day that he had, I was a little disappointed in Torrey Smith. I mean, 3 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown on the opening drive, and I immediately thought he was in for a huge night. But finishes with just 6 for 93 and a touchdown. Still very good, but I kind of just wanted more out of him. I expected more after that great opening drive. And then Bernard Pierce and Ray Rice splitting carries almost evenly again here. Is Rice falling into that must bench category? I mean, I feel like he is. You cannot start him in any format right now.
Oh, I think he's been there for a while now. Yeah. You can't trust him. No way.
In all formats, though, I mean, even 14 and 16 team leagues.
No, I guess not. Even there, he's probably still a flex type guy because there is a little upside. You've seen it a few games this year. He gets a decent amount of work, even though they split touches this past weekend. He's had a few games of over 25 carries this year. So, in a deeper league, he's a decent flex, but I'd probably rather look for some wide receivers to fill that role for me.
Yeah, I mean, PPR league's obviously much more valuable. I think he had 6 receptions in this game.
Yeah.
A little bit more valuable in PPR, but in standard formats, 14-team leagues probably is still benchable for me. 16 teams gets a little bit tougher. Maybe he still plays in those formats, but not a guy you want to turn to, not somebody you feel confident about. So let's move on to this week's upcoming game, Matt. Jaguars and Browns. I got to say, I think my ranking here of MJD is a little reckless this week. I have him at number 8, kind of feeding into what he's been doing these last few weeks. He's had a touchdown in every game since his bye week, but Cleveland has only allowed 1 rushing touchdown in the last 6 games. And let's be honest, if MJD doesn't get a touchdown, he's outside your top 20. I mean, it is just, he is not getting you the yardage this year. He's very touchdown dependent. So I'll admit, I think my number 8 ranking of him is a little reckless, but I'm gonna stick by it for now.
Marcus, what did I have him at? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the rankings with me.
I feel like I ranked him higher than I have been as well. He's been consistent recently, and the receptions have been increasing as well. He's been consistent in that, 4 or more a game. So the touches have been there, and actually the Jags have been playing a little bit better. So, number 8 may be a little high, but I think I had him higher than I have in quite a while as well. Obviously preseason, early of the year, I was kind of excited about MJD. That faded fast, but he's been improving recently.
Well, like I said, touchdown in each game since his bye week, so he has been performing in the touchdown department, but just hasn't been getting it done in the yards. Like you said, more involved in the passing game.
Yeah.
But Matt, looks like you had him ranked 15 this week.
Yeah.
Rob had him all the way down at 22. So I bet if Rob was here, he would talk a little bit more about that matchup causing this. And like I said, I would definitely buy into it a little bit. Moving on here to the Brown side of the ball here. Josh Gordon, Matt, despite missing 2 games this year, he's actually on pace for an 84-catch season, over 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns. And this week he gets the Jags defense. It's kind of middle of the pack as far as defenses go against wide receivers. We have him all top 5 this week. He's going to be a stud. But I mean, think about those numbers for a second. 84 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 8 touchdowns, and that's with missing 2 games. That's the pace he's on. He is just a beast. And then Jordan Cameron, Matt, I honestly think we're all a little low on Cameron. Rob has him the highest at 5, which is obviously, I think we still all have him around number 7, but Jaguars allowing the second most points to tight ends this year. And to your point on Tuesday, Matt, Brandon Whedon's back at quarterback where he did have some fantasy relevancy. Again, I think we may be a little too low on him this week.
I think it's just more of, you could be right. I think it's just he hasn't produced for such a long time now. You got to slide a guy down the rankings. You got to love the matchup, and I kind of am expecting a bounce back game. Sometimes when you're ranking, though, you can't go on just gut calls. You got to look at recent production, and that hasn't been there. Whedon will be, I think, a big factor for the improvement of Cameron going forward, though.
Yeah. Titans and Colts, after allowing just 2 passing touchdowns in their first 4 games, the Colts have allowed 14 passing touchdowns in their last 7. So how do you think this will affect Ryan Fitzpatrick and company? Are you expecting a big game from Fitzy?
Well, he was surprising last week. I think he had 23 in standard points and standard scoring. He's been playing pretty well, actually. Like I said Tuesday, I think this is almost how he earned all that money with Buffalo. Had a nice stretch, and then the real Ryan Fitzpatrick, please stand up. So the way the Colts have been looking lately, I point a lot of the struggles to Reggie Wayne, but he didn't play defense. So not sure what the heck is going on in that locker room. And Fitzpatrick, we're not talking about bye weeks anymore, so I can't imagine where you'd be starting him. Maybe if you're a guy who waited and you went with Eli Manning and you haven't been able to figure it out, or if you got a quarterback curse like Rob in our home league, but not a guy that I really want to play. Although I don't expect a bad day, just no bye weeks. I think there's better options.
Yeah, and I think Kendall Wright here is going to end up with a nice day. I think he's very much so flex worthy, and I think we'll talk about him a little bit later. But a guy that I definitely think could even be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 this week for you.
Maybe going forward with him, just been so consistent.
Yeah, just 5 to 10 fantasy points, just every game, every
exactly. And sometimes that's nice to have in your lineup.
Yeah, kind of evens things out a little bit for you. Meanwhile, the Titans haven't allowed a touchdown to a wide receiver since week 2. I'm the lowest on T.Y. Hilton at 28, but Matt, you got him at 16. Tell us about that.
With T.Y., I think last week was more of a fluke. There were some concerns I have, though. He's been quoted, and I don't have the exact quote, but basically saying, geez, it's tough being a number 1 guy. The defenses are focusing on him now, so it's gonna take some adjustments for him and Luck. But both players that are young and from all accounts work hard, so I see him improving. He's been playing well. Obviously, last week 5 for 36, I think it wasn't the best game, but still had the target, still had some touches. He's an explosive player too, so I don't think he can be held down again. He's the number 1 option there.
Yeah, I'm just really worried about the Titans' pass defense. They're very, very good.
Yeah.
But when you have a good pass defense, you typically have a poor run defense, and the Titans sure do, allowing the 4th most fantasy points to running backs this season. We all have Donald Brown over Trent Richardson, but I think we may all be a little low with the exception of Rob. I got him at 31. Matt, you have him at 35. Rob has him at 23. Do you think, given the amount of fantasy points that the Titans are giving up in the running game, that we're a little too low, or do you think we're going to see, an even workload kind of split between T. Rich and Donald Brown?
I think it's more about we just don't know. I think last week all of us were a little bit more excited for Donald Brown, kind of thinking that the shift had happened. Got to get Donald the ball more. And it didn't, actually. He got less carries than Richardson, and I'm pretty sure the 3rd-string guy got some work. So who knows what's going to happen there. It's more about the uncertainty on where the touches are going to go, how they're going to be split. So, yeah, I think Brown's going to be the best guy to own out of that backfield this week and possibly going forward, but take your pick. So, just not anybody that I want to recommend.
Yeah. Matt, Bears at your Vikings. I can't begin to tell you how much I love the Bears passing attack in this game. All 3 of us, you, Rob, and I, all have Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey as top 10 plays this week. Hell, Rob and I both have both of those guys in the top 8. That's how much we believe in the Bears passing game against the Vikings. Vikings are allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. We even have, all three of us have Josh McCown as a top 11 play as well. Your Vikings just can't stop anybody, can they, Matt?
No, they're awful. I'm looking forward to Patterson. See what happens with him again. 20 targets over the last two, and Adrian. I expect him to have a good day, of course. Is Forte all set? Is he good to go? I know he was a little banged up.
Yeah, he'll play.
So he'll have a beautiful day as well. Everybody playing the Vikings always does. So keep losing, Vikings. Looking for the draft pick at this point.
I was going to say, Viking side, we're not even going to waste any time on them. You're starting Peterson, and that's it. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
Dolphins and Jets. In the first game as the guy, Lamar Miller, we all three of us have him outside our top 30. I mean, for me, it's a combination of their terrible offensive line and a strong Jets run defense. You're not starting Lamar Miller unless you're in the deepest of deep leagues. Mike Wallace, though, Matt, he's going to line up across from Antonio Cromartie this weekend. Cromartie's going to be following him all over the field. Who do you think wins this matchup? Do you think Cromartie's going to shut Wallace down?
Is Cromartie going to shut Wallace down, or is the Dolphins offense and Ryan Tannehill and Mike Wallace all going to shut Mike Wallace down? He's been so boom or bust this year. I can't begin to act like I know when the good games are going to be, and even if it's going to be because of Cromartie or not. He hasn't been playing all that well recently, Cromartie. I think he's a little banged up. So I guess I'll say Wallace wins, but who knows? It's anybody's guess. I have no good analysis for anybody on him. I really don't know when it's going to happen.
See, I think he really is going to get shut down. Cromartie is a shutdown corner that's really been able to keep people down. And Mike Wallace, not exactly the best of talents. I think the best quote I saw about Mike Wallace was earlier this year. The football guys, when he was limited into practice, the football guys actually, when they write their little comments on it, they said, limited by what? His hands and his feet? Sure is. Yeah, I thought that was a great little saying about Mike Wallace. Chris Ivory, Matt, though, looks like he's probable to play here against a terrible Dolphins run defense. You, Rob, and I, we all put Powell in there and basically ranked Powell on Tuesday as a top 20 play because I'm assuming we all basically assumed that Ivory wasn't going to play here. Now, assuming he does, where are you going to rank Chris Ivory?
I think he'll probably be right where Powell was. I like Ivory as a player better, as a runner, but Powell is solid out of the backfield. If he was going to be the guy, he's an every down back, and that's something Ivory really isn't. He'll come off the field for those passing situations. So I say that I'll just switch him. And you're right. I mean, the reason I had Powell up there was I assumed Ivory would be out based on his injury past. I know he had a hamstring thing going on, and I just figured he'd be missing this game. So I loved Powell, but now I'll love Ivory instead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ivory will swap positions with me with Powell and then probably be bumped up one or two spots.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
I like Ivory a little bit better, obviously, than Powell. I think he can do a little bit more explosive guy. Cardinals and Eagles, LaShawn McCoy, this week he gets the number one Cardinals run defense against opposing running backs. Then he gets the Lions defense, who we just talked about at the top of the show. The final 2 weeks, he has great matchups against the Vikings and the Bears. So, I mean, two terrible matchups followed by two excellent matchups. It's not going to stop you one way or another from, playing LaShawn McCoy, but just something to think about these next 2 weeks. If somehow you do have a better option, if you're in a shallow league, like an 18 league or something like that, you may want to think about switching him out. Personally, my preference wouldn't play him in any sort of those daily fantasy leagues like FanDuel or Draft Street. Two really, really tough matchups where I don't expect him to do well. But Riley Cooper, Matt, last game was pretty much a stinker for him, 3 for 37. But assuming Patrick Peterson is going to line up on Sean Jackson, I think we could see Cooper well outproduce where, we have him in our consensus rankings at number 16. Like I said, I'm in a PPR league, and I still have the choice now between Cooper or CJ Spiller in my flex position. Who would you go with in a PPR league?
Cooper.
I was going to say, I'm going with Cooper. CJ Spiller does have a nice matchup against the Falcons that we'll talk about a little bit later, so it does make
great.
A little bit.
Not even, I mean, that's better than nice, but it's just so inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Cooper's last game, though, you could say the same thing about Cooper.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think, obviously, he's been a little bit more consistent, obviously, than C.J. Spiller, unless you consider consistency terrible. You consider,
Yeah.
consider consistently getting 30 yards consistent, then, yeah, I mean, C.J. Spiller's consistent, but consistently bad.
Yeah, some things that worry me about Cooper. Foles hasn't been throwing the football a ton, so opportunities haven't been there. The target numbers aren't exactly high. He's taking advantage of those opportunities, not so much in the last game a couple weeks ago before the bye, but certainly before that. And even in the 3 for 37 game, he still had his opportunities. He still took the shots down the field. They like to get him, down the field. So Cooper and Foles, we know us here at Blindside love that matchup. I mean that connection.
Yeah, we do. Bucks and Panthers. Matt, this is getting a little interesting because in a lot of leagues this guy's going to still be available, but D'Angelo Williams was questionable, sat out practice all this week. Mike Tolbert also questionable, limited in practice today and yesterday. So is it Jonathan Stewart time, or does this kind of reinforce my number one ranking of Cam Newton this week?
Well, the Bucks are a tough defense against the run, so I don't exactly love the matchup regardless. But if Williams and Tolbert are out of this game, then I'm gonna move Stewart way up my rankings. He'll become.
Does he crack your top 20?
Yeah, easy for me. Which I've said many times isn't hard to do this year. So it's not exactly a ringing endorsement, but yeah, I'm gonna like him quite a bit more than where I have him right now. Of course, with those two out. But we'll see. It's something you gotta wait for to find out what's gonna happen. And Marcus, I know you ranked Newton number 1 this week, so I think that's only going to help his situation as well.
Yeah, I mean Stewart has actually looked really good this year when he's had the opportunity. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities, but when he's had it, he's looked good. We just mentioned Cam Newton. Why do I have Cam so high? Bucks have allowed 17 passing touchdowns in their 7 games since their bye week. 2 or more passing touchdowns in every game since their bye week. So, I mean, pretty much lock up Cam Newton as a 2-touchdown day as his floor, and sky's the limit for Cam Newton. I mean, he can get it for you rushing, passing, everywhere. I think he's going to have a great, great game. And again, I got him number 1 this week. Bobby Rainey, Matt, you talked about him a little bit when we talked about the Lions, but I think this is another game where he's going to have a tough time. I mean, Carolina run defense is legit. They've only allowed 200-yard rushers this year and only 3 rushing touchdowns to running backs. Tough sledding ahead for him too. He's got Buffalo, the number 8 ranked rush defense, San Francisco, and St. Louis, which St. Louis gets a little bit easier for him. But I think we kind of need to keep taming our expectations for Bobby Rainey with some more bad matchups coming up. And then finally, Panthers equally good on their pass defense. Haven't allowed a multiple touchdown passing game this year, and only 3 passing touchdowns to wide receivers. So don't be surprised if Vincent Jackson goes without a touchdown in this game. Patriots and Texans. Who do you think, Matt, currently has the most fantasy points at wide receiver for the Patriots this year?
Edelman.
It is Edelman. Did you look that up?
No, but that's easy.
Easy. Wow. I mean, Tompkins had a great start to the year. Dobson's had a few good games.
Yeah, I don't know. I just
Amendola, obviously the big name there. Just kind of caught me off guard that Edelman was the highest scoring Patriots wide receiver this year. Shane Vereen. We all had Shane Vereen over Stephen Ridley. No surprise there, huh?
No, I mean, I think I might have put Bolden ahead. I don't know how I shook it up, and really anybody's guess, but I think Vereen's role is set in stone. He's going to get the ball out of the backfield. He's going to have his 6 to 8 receptions. I think 5 to 8 receptions. So what's going to happen with him. He'll also get the carries worked in there. I just have no clue what's going to happen the rest of the way. There were 11 fumbles in the game the other night, so how much can you really blame Ridley when everybody was putting it all over the field? Maybe that's something that they looked at in film and realized, let's get back to him. Blunt, I think he was knocked out. I really do. So who knows? I really don't know what's going to happen this week. I thought Bolden looked awesome when he got in.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ridley still goes back to his role. That seems to be Belichick's MO. He'll when Ridley has fumbling problems, he comes out for that game, but is right back in the next game. I don't think we've actually seen him get benched for a full game. So I think he's back in this one. But like you said, Shane Vereen's role is what it is, and I think he's going to consistently outperform Ridley. A lot safer, obviously, than Ridley is. Dennis Johnson, though, and for the Texans side here, Matt, you and I both ranked him. I was really surprised that Rob didn't rank him at all. I mean, great matchup for both of them. Ben Tate, obviously, he's going to get the start there, but kind of hard to trust either guy here with the way Kubiak's been acting. Great matchup, though, with Mayo, Wilfork out. And then, Matt, finally, I just wanted to ask you, Rob and I both have the Texans as 11th or better for fantasy defense. You have them dead last against the Patriots. Tell us why you have them dead last.
I just, the way Brady played in that second half last week, I think it's going to carry over. It's not going to be -3 after the wind chill. I think Brady's clicking on all cylinders right now, so I'm scared to play that New England offense. And the Texans have been struggling, so.
Be interested to see if you have a Brady Bowl prediction for us later. That should be interesting. Falcons and Bills. Matt, why no love for Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller against a terrible Falcons defense? They've allowed at least 109 rushing yards to running backs in each of the last 5 games and 5 rushing touchdowns over those 5 games. It looks like you had Fred Jackson pretty low, but pretty close right there with C.J. Spiller. What was your thoughts?
Just have no idea. This backfield is another one I can't figure out. Honestly, I don't really know what to expect from either one of these guys. What kind of the workload they're all going to get. How healthy is everybody? It's a mess in there in Buffalo. So I know the matchup is awesome, but I just don't know which one's going to do it, or possibly both. So I don't know.
I would say for me, Fred Jackson's pretty much the guy. I think there's only been 2 games this year that C.J. Spiller's actually had more carries than him. So they seem to rely a little bit more on Fred Jackson with using C.J. Spiller as the big play guy, the guy that hopefully breaks one of those touches, get the ball to him out in space. But like you said, both of them could have very, very good games here. Falcons defense equally as bad. Not sure why, call it a gut call here, but I think Marquise Goodwin has a double-digit fantasy game here. I just think there's something that's going to happen, that he's going to get open for a bomb or something's going to happen, but he seems to just be really clicking lately, whereas guys like Robert Woods have been inactive. So they must see something, a good one that they like, and it seems to be working. And then finally, Matt, since coming back from his injury, Roddy White has been held under 35 receiving yards in all 3 games. You have Roddy ranked over guys like Marcus Colston, Mike Wallace, Steve Smith, and Anquan Bolden. So I want to ask you, I want to make a bet on this right now. You get Roddy, I get one of any of those other guys, and I'll even let you pick the guy. Who are you picking?
You get Steve Smith.
All right, so you want to do Roddy White versus Steve Smith in our beer bet of the week?
Yep.
All right, there it is. Mark it down.
I hate them all. Just to be clear, I hate all of them. Very much so.
Oh, I know. You ranked all of them. You ranked all of them after Roddy White, but
yeah, I hate all of them, including Roddy White. But God damn it, one of these weeks, as bad as I've been with him, one of these weeks he's gonna go off, and I'm gonna be able to say, "I told you he was gonna do it."
They're gonna be waiting a while, I think, before that happens, if ever again.
I've already been waiting all year. If you've been listening to me on Roddy White, you're not in the playoffs, and I'm sorry.
That pretty much sums up Matt's Roddy White love. Rams and 49ers, Frank Gore, I've got him at 16. Rob has him at 5, and Matt, you got him at 8. I guess I'm down on him because his carries have gone down every week since week 6, and Colin Kaepernick is getting more of his receiving weapons back in this game, back into the game. So why so high on Frank Gore, Matt?
I just think with the receiving weapons, the offense is going to become more lethal, and the scoring opportunities are going to be more plentiful as well. So he's a guy that you're right. This is a trend. This is what we see for over the years here. End of season, the numbers go down. They want him fresh for the playoffs. I continue to like Gore. I love him as a player, and I think yes, the offense is going to be better because of the weapons coming back, which I think will help the scoring opportunities even more. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm not 13 carries the last 2 weeks. I just think he's getting older. They want to keep him fresh. And then, like I just said, Colin Kaepernick with his receiving options, he's a reason why I like Colin Kaepernick going forward. I mean, we're seeing more targets to Mario Manningham. He's always had that great connection with Vernon Davis. Kind of got reconnected with Anquan Bolden last week, and then Jim Harbaugh today actually came out and said that Michael Crabtree will make his debut this weekend. That's a lot of great receiving weapons for Colin Kaepernick. I'm not saying I'm going to throw Colin Kaepernick into that top 10, top 7 quarterback range yet, but I think he's a week or two away from being there for me because he's got all the options, and they want to kind of rest Frank Gore for the playoffs. Other running back in this game, though, Zach Stacy, probable for this game. Obviously he's going to play 26 or more carries in every game with Kellen Clemens as the starter. None of us ranked Stacy in our Tuesday rankings because obviously we must have thought he was going to miss this game. But where would he fall now for you, Matt? He's got to be top 10 easy, right?
Yeah, easy. No question. The workload has been there. I mean, what would he have done last week? After the production he had to start the game, Benny Cunningham came in and looked like the next Emmitt Smith. I have to assume Stacy probably would have performed even a little better. Would have been a huge week, and I expect another good week this week. And just one thing with Michael Crabtree, just temper your expectations on him. He's a guy coming back from an Achilles. It's a serious injury. I'm not expecting, Josh Gordon coming back blowing up, Justin Blackmon coming back blowing up. Those were off suspensions. Andre Brown was on an injury, but he had been running for weeks. This is a serious injury. Blowing your Achilles, your explosiveness, those kind of things are things that sometimes don't come back. So it'll be interesting to see what he looks like. I don't think he's going to come save the world right away.
No, I think you're going to see a lot of like what you saw with Percy Harvin in his first week back, where he kind of sees a third of the snaps, maybe has a catch or two, something like that, and they kind of ease him back into the game. Broncos and Chiefs, Matt, no Sean Moreno probable for this game. If you own him, are you risking it? It's a later game. What are you going to do? I mean, to be honest, I can't believe I'm the highest on him this week out of all of us, but I think I'm taking the risk on him. What would you do? I mean, obviously you're a no Sean Moreno owner. What would you do?
Oh, I'd take the risk for sure. If he's probable, I'm going to say he's playing. So I think they learned their lesson. We're not going to see 37 carries from him again. There's a good chance that Fox called Del Rio and told him, if you ever do that again, think about it, coming in and killing the head coach's running back. But no, I think you got to roll with him for sure. He's been just too good this year. Unbelievable. Third running back overall in fantasy football. Who would have thought that? Yeah, he's probable. He's going to play. You got to play him.
What about Julius Thomas, though, another Broncos player with injury concerns, currently listed as questionable and was limited in practice today? How confident are you about Julius Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he played last week, and that hurt you if you were going with that because of the later game. It was a Sunday night, right? Or Monday night? Yeah, so it was a Sunday night game.
Actually killed me because I had him in one of my starting lineups in the league. Ended up losing that league by 2 fantasy points.
Yeah, he inactive right before the game, if I remember correctly. So it's surprising, if he was that close to playing last week. I got to assume he's going to play this week, right?
Still questionable, still limited.
Oh, I hear you.
Still a little scary for me. When these two teams met just 2 weeks ago, Alex Smith actually put up his second best game of the season. Aside from Charles, is there anyone you're starting on the Chiefs side?
Well, Smith had a couple good weeks in a row now. He had another huge game this past weekend. So, interesting, They've got to score. Denver has been known to score a few points this year. Yes, the Chiefs played some pretty good D on them the first week that they played. I don't think I'm playing Alex Smith, unless you're talking the 2 quarterback leagues. And then if I have to start him, I'm probably a little bit excited about it because I could see a big day. But I'm no bye weeks. There's so many other guys I'd rather roll the dice on.
By the way, that great Chiefs defense that we're always talking about. Negative fantasy points in the last 2 weeks. Negative fantasy points against the Denver offense, I understand. negative fantasy points against the San Diego offense. Ugh,
Yeah.
something's going on there.
Well, they lost Tamba Ali. They lost Justin Houston. Their two leading sack guys. Two of the leading sack guys in the NFL. So, I mean, that's what's going on. That's tough. When you lose guys, you can't generate any pass rush. It changes the defense, and it really, in the second half last week, the defensive backs were exposed because no pressure on the quarterback makes it a lot easier for those wide receivers to run around and that quarterback to have a little more time to complete those passes. But Marcus, yeah, you're right. That defense that everybody was talking about, I don't want anything to do with them this week.
Quickly going downhill. Bengals, Chargers. Ryan Matthews is probable in this game. I'm still not trusting him. Not with his injury history and the potential for his hamstring to kind of flare up. I'm not seeing it from Ryan Matthews. I wish Rob was here too for this because I wanted to ask him about Ladarius Green. You know, Matt, you know that Rob obviously likes Ladarius Green, picked him up in our home league that isn't nearly deep enough for most people to pick up Ladarius Green. You and I ranked him. You had him at 14. I am at 17. Rob didn't even rank him. I wonder what's going on there.
What's going on probably is the fact that he's not a guy that comes to your mind when you're doing your rankings, and I bet you it just totally slipped. You know, he's been relevant for 2 weeks now out of his whole career so far, and I think, yeah, I bet you he forgot about it. Obviously he likes him. He picks him up in our league, doesn't rank him. That's interesting. Maybe he didn't want to rank him because he didn't want us to see the love and maybe pick him up before him.
I was going to say, I feel like this is the poker equivalent of slow rolling.
Yeah.
You're the one that's kind of slow to turn your hand over even though you have the way dominant hand. Just a little odd from Rob. I wish he was here so we could ask him about it.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Ladarius Green is more like pocket twos. You know what I mean?
that trip up, and then all of a sudden you're looking pretty good. Did you know, Matt, though, Giovanni Bernard is the number 12 running back in fantasy right now. That makes him a clear-cut number 1 running back. Didn't realize he was up that high after these last couple weeks of great fantasy production. San Diego, I thought this was interesting too. In the 7 games before the bye, hadn't allowed a rushing touchdown to a running back. After the bye, in just 4 games, they've allowed 7 rushing touchdowns to running backs. That's amazing to be so good up until the bye and then just die off after the bye. Wish I could find out what happened there, but we could see another nice game from Giovanni Bernard here. And then finally, Chargers are allowing the 5th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. I still have A.J. Green at number 6. Total got called, but, I mean, a little lower than what you and Rob had him at 3. You got him, you're still starting him, but, you know, I just a little bit lower on him this week than you guys were. Giants and Redskins. Yeah, Matt, I finally did it. I put Ruben Randall as my highest-ranked Giants receiver. What do you think of that?
Well, Marcus, you saw what I did last week in our home league. I had Percy Harvin. I found out Nix was inactive, and I took Cruz. Found out Nix was inactive. I replaced Cruz in my starting lineup with Ruben Randall. So yep. I think if Nix is out of the lineup, Ruben Randall does become the number 1 there, and that's, I think, a little out of the norm to say. But, you know, targets obviously will improve if Nix is out of the mix. But Ruben Randall has been their end zone, you know, has been their touchdown guy this year. I wouldn't expect that to change, you know, so that's why I like him.
Let's assume for a second Nix does play. I would still put Randall ahead of Victor Cruz. You would have Victor Cruz higher?
Yeah, I would. But the thing that I like is we're not quite in the playoffs yet. I need 1 week to shake out where Nix is active. I just want to see what's going to happen. If Nix is active, what does that leave Randall? Does he still get the lion's share of the snaps over Nix? The shift will have happened, that means. And then going forward, I love Ruben Randall. And I'll probably continue to rank him over Cruz if that's the case.
I'll say this. If you take out Victor Cruz's week 1 and his 3 touchdowns, so from week 2 on, Ruben Randall actually has more fantasy points than Victor Cruz. So he's actually been getting it done throughout that same span. I mean, obviously, you know, you can call a 3-touchdown game for Cruz pretty fluky. So you throw that out, and he's been right up there with Cruz, outperforming him. So I don't think this is as crazy as it probably looks. You know, 6 touchdowns this year to Cruz's 1 over that same span. So he's really been getting it done, and Cruz kind of lacking in that touchdown department. And then finally, Matt, Brandon Jacobs, already been ruled out of this game. We already had Andre Brown as a top 7 running back this weekend. And, I mean, Andre Brown has just been the holiday gift that keeps on giving. I mean, Redskins have allowed 19 or more fantasy points to running backs in 8 out of 11 games this season. Think about that. 19 fantasy points in 8 out of 11 games. That is crazy. No Brandon Jacobs. Obviously, Peyton Hillis will be playing the Brandon Jacobs role. But I think Andre Brown is going to get a crazy ton of work in this. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Brandon Jacobs being out, I don't think increases his value. I think he's nothing more than, a guy that's going to spell Brown. I know he had a big run last week in a decent game, but I love Andre whether Jacobs is there or not. So, yeah, I agree with you. He's got to love the matchup.
Love him even more now, though. Saints and Seahawks. Again, another one. I wish Rob was here because it looks like he's still afraid of Pierre Thomas. He had Pierre Thomas 29th in his rankings. Seattle, not exactly the tough run defense that you remember them being. 133 rushing yards to running backs on average over the last 4 games. Thomas has been averaging 17 touches a game since their Week 7 bye. I've been liking Thomas more and more as these weeks go on. Beginning of the year, Matt, in our home league, I dropped him because I didn't think he would ever be that guy to get a large amount of touches. And lately he has been. How do you feel about Pierre Thomas?
Yeah, he's been the guy to own out of that backfield for sure. And if you can kind of pin down which running back you'd want in an offense like that, that'd be a nice thing. And you kind of have been able to this year for the first time in a while. Pierre Thomas has been pretty consistent. Even a couple big games here and there, too, to help you win weeks for sure. So he's been better than I ever expected him to be. He's a guy that I've always kind of hated just because of the workload there, the way it's spread out from player to player. Even when guys get hurt, guys come off the practice squad and play. It's been inconsistent, but this year, kind of the opposite. He's been pretty consistent. So, yeah, I like him for sure. I think 29th is way too low.
Yeah, way too low. Marshawn Lynch here, though, Matt, questionable in this game. They said that had they had drills on Thursday, he actually would have been listed as a limited participant. Monday night game, it's one of those things where it's like you're going to have to either roll the dice with him, or if you're the Lynch owner, I think what you got to do is go and pick up Turbin here and kind of hold on to Turbin just in case. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. Absolutely is a guy who tends to be on the injury report, banged up here and there, but seems to play through quite a bit. So I got a feeling he's going to be playing, but have that safety net on your bench with Turbin. If he's not available, it's not the worst thing to pick up Michael, just because at least you'd have somebody to roster or to play. And he could be involved as well if Lynch was out. So
that was going to be my next question. If Lynch is out, is it definitely Turbin, or do you think they put Michael in there?
Michael hasn't been getting really any work. It's been Turbin as the backup to spell Lynch. But if it was a situation with Lynch not there, I really don't know. I don't have any kind of insider information, what they're thinking within the organization. I thought preseason that the way Michael played, he would be the guy to roster if you had Lynch. I actually drafted Michael thinking that, but as the season's gone on, Turbin has been the one clearly to get the work over Michael. So I would have to say it would be Turbin, but we've seen crazier things before. Brian Leonard was the backup, and then all of a sudden Bobby Rainey had 30 carries. So,
Michael, it's interesting how they've been using him because last game just 1 carry. Game before that, though, he had 8. So quite a few carries, 2 games ago. So it really would be interesting to see. I still think safer side would be Turbin. That's the guy I would grab, but wouldn't be surprised if Michael gets a lot of carries in this game if Lynch is out.
Flex. Running backs. Wide receivers. Flex. Flex. Flex.
All right, Matt. So let's talk about flex here. We got a bunch of questions from people on Twitter that kind of sent in their flex questions for us to answer. So let's start these off here. Add Something About Football asks, after Eddie Lacy got him 5.9 points in a PPR league, does he play it safe with Shane Vereen, or does he swing for the fences with CJ 2 yards per carry?
Well, I mean, I think I'm gonna go CJ. Bigger upside. Yeah, it's gonna be CJ Y2 PC for me, and hopefully it's CJ 2K you get this week.
Yeah, see, I was going to say I still go with Vereen here. I mean, 8 receptions in each of the 2 games since he's been back. It is PPR. That's 8 fantasy points right there. That's a lot of fantasy points. I'm going Vereen because especially coming off of the previous game with the Blunt fumble, the Ridley fumble, we could still see a big game from Vereen here, and I think he's a lot safer. All those receptions in PPR is just fantasy gold. At Jonathan_TTF, Jonathan from over at TopTeamFantasy.com asks, Mike Wallace, Delaney Walker, or Steven Jackson?
Well, I'm going to take Delaney out of that one pretty quickly.
I'll answer this one first. For me, I really think Cromartie is going to shut down Mike Wallace. I'm going Steven Jackson.
Yeah, I think I'll go Steven Jackson as well. There's been some signs of life with him, and
I don't feel confident about it, but Steven Jackson's my guy.
And do we know what kind of league it is? PPR?
No.
No. Yeah, I'll go Steven as well. Mike, don't be fooled by Mike Wallace last week. He's just been so inconsistent. Obviously, Steven hasn't been good at all this year, but there's been some signs of life with him as well. So I'm saying Steven, but it's Steven or Jackson. It's Steven or Wallace. Definitely not Delaney.
All right, the next question here. This is a real tough one, I think. At the Fantasy Savior asks, Shane Vereen, Giovanni Bernard, or Kendall Wright in a half-point PPR. Man, if he's got those 3 guys to pick from in a flex, he's doing really well. Matt, who are you taking? That's a tough one, though.
Well, Kendall's going to get you the 5 to 8 receptions. He's probably not going to score a touchdown. Vereen, he's going to get his 5 to 8 receptions. He's going to get 5 to 10 carries. And Gio as well, like you said, great options to have. I'm going to go Gio because of the higher upside. And I don't know. I don't love it. These are options that
3 good options.
Even if you're wrong, you still got to smile just because these guys are all on your options for a flex.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going Giovanni Bernard here just because that stat I brought up earlier. 7 rushing touchdowns to running backs in the last 4 weeks on the Chargers defense. So they're letting up rushing touchdowns. I just think Giovanni Bernard, much bigger chance for a rushing touchdown. All 3 of these guys are going to get their receptions. Obviously, Vereen and Kendall Wright a little bit more, but Giovanni Bernard much more likely to get a touchdown here. And then finally, our last flex question, at Poppin' Locked asks, half-point PPR, he needs a wide receiver and he needs a guy in his flex. We need to pick out of Danny Amendola, Anquan Bolden, T.Y. Hilton, Bobby Rainey, and Monty Ball.
I want T.Y. Hilton and Bobby Rainey. Even though, Rainey or Bolden, the matchup is so tough with Rainey, that's the only thing that's killing me. But I'll say T.Y. Hilton and Rainey. I got to go with a guy that's going to get 15 to 25 touches, and that's Bobby Rainey.
I'm going T.Y. and Bolden. Bobby Rainey, I said it. Another tough matchup this week, and I'm not a Bobby Rainey believer. So I'm going T.Y. and Bolden here.
Last week was a tough game for Bobby Rainey, and then you saw Lacy get shut down as well. So you can get excited about that, or you can look at it as, hey, Rainey does have another one of those almost impossible matchups. So yeah. I don't completely disagree with you on that, Marcus. That's another tough call. But again, I just say Rainey only because you're guaranteed 15 to 25 touches, I think, with him.
Yeah, a little bit safer play. I get it there. So make sure to follow Matt and I on Twitter. Me at Marcus Katkin, Matt at Matt Dugal. Keep sending your questions to hashtag BlindsidePod or blindside@blindsidefootball.com so you can have your questions read on the podcast. Finally, don't forget, Matt, Rob, and I will be live tweeting every Sunday afternoon from noon until kickoff. Send your start-sit questions to hashtag AskBlindside. Me personally, I don't know how available I'll be this Sunday because I will be out of town. I'll try my best to answer questions remotely from my cell phone. So make sure you send those questions in. Matt and Rob obviously will be available. I'll try my best to help answer you guys. But a couple more questions for this podcast today, non-flex related. At Something About Football asks, should I drop Broncos or Cardinals defense for the Saints?
Broncos easy.
Yeah,
I mean,
Broncos.
One thing, coming to the end of the year here, matchups are a huge thing for sure, and I don't know all the matchups off the top of my head, but Broncos is a defense I don't want to play in almost any matchup, so that's easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm with you, Matt. I stream defenses as well, play the matchups.
I don't ever recommend, by the way, rostering 2 defenses, Marcus, but coming into the playoffs, it's not a bad idea if you're really liking the matchups that those 2 defenses have and you're excited about the rest of your roster.
I gotta say, I'm not one for rostering 2 defenses as well. Matt, if you've noticed, though, I've been doing it in our home league for one reason only. As I told you, I stream defenses, and in our league, it's a fab budget where you have to spend big bucks to kind of get those big pickups every week. So what I'll actually do is I'll look at the matchups a week ahead of time, see who has a great matchup next week, pick them up this week, stash them away for a week so I have them for next week. So it kind of saves my fab budget a little bit more. So I can pick them up this week for $1 rather than spending $10 on them next week. So as we get into the playoff season, I don't mind rostering 2 defenses, but only in that scenario where you're streaming defenses and looking at the matchups, and a lot of other people in your league are doing the same thing, so you have to kind of beat them to the punch.
Yeah, a perfect example of that, Marcus. I don't know if you saw what I did today in the home league. I picked up the Bills defense because of their Week 15 matchup, which is my first playoff game. So a situation there where, I'm rostering 2 teams because I love their Week 15 matchup. They're playing the Jaguars, and I want that matchup. So I'm picking them up now when they're $1 because no one's thinking about it, versus come Week 15 in the fab when who knows what I have to pay for that kind of a matchup.
Right, and that's another good example. If you've already locked up your playoff spot, and you, Matt, for your example, you already have a first-round bye in the playoffs, so you're picking your players based on your matchups for weeks 15 and 16 for those weeks. So the other question he had was rest of the season, Alshon Jeffrey or Keenan Allen?
Oh, Alshon Jeffrey. Alshon Jeffrey.
I love Alshon. Jason Duvall at Brothers Mayhem asks, PPR league and he needs 2 guys. Donnie Avery, Kenny Stills, Jordy Nelson, Marquise Goodwin, and Brian Hartline. This one's so easy for me. It's Jordy Nelson, and then Marquise Goodwin is my guy for the second one. Who was it for you, Matt?
Yeah, definitely Nelson, number 1. The other guys are all tough to decide from, but you know what? I'll go ahead with your Goodwin gut call this week.
I have a feeling about him. He's been performing really well these last couple of weeks. Finally, guys, as you know, we're still looking for more fantasy football bloggers, so if you think you have what it takes to join the Blindside team, send your email to career@blindsidefootball.com. Send us a couple writing samples, and hopefully we can get you on our team. So, Matt, now it's time for our bold predictions. I'm going to run through mine here real quick. I mean, we've been talking about him pretty much all podcast, it seems now, but Marquise Goodwin, I'm going to say 15-plus fantasy points for him. I really think he breaks a couple of big receptions this weekend. Josh McCown, I think, is going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Matt, it's so easy to pick on your Vikings. He's going to blow up this week. Mike Wallace, we've been talking about him. I say under 40 receiving yards for Mike Wallace. And then I'm going to say, we were talking about C.J. Spiller versus Fred Jackson this week. I'm going to say both of them run for 100 yards in this game against the Falcons. And then finally, Andre Brown, you know how much we both loved him already. And then with the Brandon Jacobs news, I'm going to say Andre Brown finishes as the number 1 running back in fantasy this week. Matt, you got any bold predictions?
No, you did enough for both of us. Honestly, I was a little too busy with Thanksgiving to look too deep into these, so I could pick a few out of the hat, but I'll just leave it at that. You did some great ones. I'll second all those. How's that? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Boo. Boo family. Yay football.
I didn't say that.
I'm just kidding. Family.
The wife listens to the podcast sometimes, so that was Marcus, everyone.
Oh, so she's the listener we get every week.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Perfect.
that's the one.
That's awesome.
I have her disguise she actually is all the questions too. We just have a bunch of Twitter things set up, and just to make us feel a little better.
Huh?
Yeah.
What a clever ruse she has going on. Little did I know until now. Now the cat's out of the bag. All right, well, Matt, that does it for me. You got anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you on Sunday.
See ya.
Yo, check it, it's my time. I'm rapping about Blindside, fantasy football podcast in this rhyme because they got me the inside scoop on Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he's that dude on Cam Newton. Yeah, they give me the news more on Megatron, Calvin Johnson if I stay tuned. On all quarterbacks, RG3 happens to be the fastest QB in the league. In fact, Colin Kaepernick is rider QB for them 49ers. It ain't hard to see, Some awesome people hosting Marcus Katkin and Matt Dugal. You should be joining. Skinny or fat, short or tall, anyone can tune in to Blindside Football. Have a try, dude. Listen on iTunes or blindsidefootball.com too,